Today we're gathered in a library, the wonderful Library of Birmingham, my first visit here. And I can't tell you how absolutely stoked I am to be invited to speak to you on this stage on this subject. Ordinarily, I'd give you a talk about public policy with a lot of diagrams and charts and doom and gloom. But instead today, what I'd like to do is tell a short story. That short story, like any decent story, has a narrative running through it, which is words. Words because words fascinate me. They've always fascinated me. Words because they terrify me, as you can see. Words because I have a love-hate relationship with them. As a young person, I could be mostly found playing away at my mother's typewriter, declaring that I wanted to be the next Jessica Fletcher. I was going to be a writer. That was me. And when I wasn't writing, I was thinking about reading. And when I wasn't found under a pile of books, I was demanding to go to my local public library, a lot smaller than this one, I should add. In fact, it probably has about a third of the bookshelves you can see in that picture. What was amazing to me when I'd finished reading through the amount of fiction was I'd run out of space, I'd run out of a ticket, and I demanded a ticket for the adult books. And they were very gracious in supervising me to go to the non-fiction section. And wow, more words. Words everywhere. Words in different languages. Bit of a geek. Words, and then pictures, maps of the world, and then the best of all, pictures about the universe. It was amazing to me, this idea that you could go into possibly the smallest library in the country, and there beneath the book covers of a bookshelf, you could find the entire universe out there. To me, it seemed that libraries were entirely about exploration, libraries were about discovery. So at lunchtime, I was really thrilled to go and find the discovery floor and the secret garden. As a teenager, I volunteered in the school library, and like a lot of teenagers, libraries were still about discovery, but they were about self-discovery. They were about, who am I? Do I fit in? Is everybody else like me? And as time went by, how am I going to get on in the world? What am I going to do in the world? Why do they want me to be this? Do I want to be that? Much the same as most teenagers. So the library became a place of refuge, and then it became a place of questioning. And by the time I got to university, the thing that I took most from the school library was poetry. Most people went to university and had fun. I joined the Poetry Society. This is my most rash confessional, so if you go online and you type my name in a poem, you'll find the very first poem that was published in a book with my name against it. I had just fallen in love, I have no excuses, but it does end with the words, "Your love is but a word." So again, the same central theme, ringing out, I'm obsessed with words the whole time. And then I found there's this amazing university library, and there are shelves and shelves full of philosophers talking about the world being structured by language, by words. Everything becoming perfectly clear to me then that I'd been on the right track all along. But at some point, sitting in the library looking at all of these philosophers talking about words, the love-hate relationship kicks in and the hate part starts. And for me, they had these really big ideas. My ideas were never going to be big enough. I was never going to get to stand here and say this sort of thing to anybody. My words, the words I'd use to articulate my ideas, would never be the right words. I was privileged enough to stay at university for 10 years, but slowly but surely stopped writing, couldn't write. Slowly but surely stopped reading, stopped going to libraries that I loved. I had a crisis of self-worth, of value, if you like, and everything that articulated me through words came to an end, age 25. That's a doom story. We go to a different discussion, fast forward to 2008, and we find people talking about a different sense of value, a different questioning of value, the value of our financial institutions, of the things that we purchase, the things that we've invested in. All that's solid melts to air. And I've successfully avoided words. I've got myself a job. I'm supporting communities to take over land and buildings that they care about. And I love it, and I get to go out and talk to people and enthuse them, and I don't have to write many words. And then somebody phones at the beginning of the summer of 2010, said, "What are you going to do about the libraries?" As if this is my responsibility, as if this is something I can fix. And what she had specifically in mind was this graph of doom. So here I couldn't resist the one chart. So if you're not familiar with the graph of doom, the only thing to take away from this is that predictions at the moment are that between 2010 and 2020, 90% of cultural budgets that local governments control will have been cut. That's your arts that we heard about earlier. That's also your library services. What are we going to do about the libraries? Indeed, a massive question. So this is what we did do. Working with Locality, we set up a national network of online resource, full of resources for communities that suddenly started to call in their tens and said, help us to save our library. We knocked on the door of central government and we said, okay, what are we going to do about this? There is no such thing as good practice for communities running libraries in large numbers. It was the fastest transferring service in the country. We've gone from 1% to 10% of public libraries being managed by volunteers since 2010-11. We've more recently tried to say, okay, they can't run on fresh air. This isn't the right way to do it. They need to work as social enterprises as a very minimum. And we've tried to think about how you would generate an income that is not incongruent with the ethos of a public library that is about access for all and not charging people to access knowledge and know-how and education skills. And we've also looked at what's different or distinctive about rural libraries because they don't play out quite the same way as a grand building in the centre of Birmingham. For some reason, that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough still for me, and it felt like, in some respects, we were helping people to save an idea of a library that had gone before, an older idea of a library, and that's not to disrespect people that have stood up and that have campaigned today in Liverpool and marched for their libraries or anywhere else. It's to say that there needs to be a forward vision of libraries, not one articulated top-down, but one that we all buy into if they're to have a rationale in the 21st century. I'm shamelessly now going to borrow this moment from a gentleman at the Smithsonian I saw speak a couple of weeks ago, Michael Edson. He talked about Vera Rubin, who was a woman in the 40s and 50s, tried to get into university and was turned down because she was a woman to begin with, but eventually got in. And when she studied, she started to take measurements of spiral galaxies, and she found something odd. She wrote in her notebook, my idea and my project is really a little insignificant. Nobody will ever take any notice. But what she discovered was, when she went out and measured various things, there was something incongruent. Either Newton was wrong, or there was something else out there preventing galaxies from flying apart. And this is how we get dark matter. So Vera Rubin discovers dark matter, and Michael Edson stands up and says, her calculations point to 95% of the known universe being dark matter, something that you can't see, that we've never studied. And he posed the question, what if our cultural institutions, our memory institutions, our libraries and our museums only contain 5% of our culture? What if 95% of our culture is dark matter and it's out there in your heads and mine, and we never put it in the library, or the people put their thing in the library? He also talked about Tim Berners-Lee and the invention of the World Wide Web, and pointed out there was something really fundamentally different and revolutionary about the World Wide Web, and that was that it gave people equal right of access to read information, but also to write information. And somehow we still seem to have, to me, a view of libraries that is about access to information and not access to the tools to produce knowledge and know-how and to share that with other people. And if they're to reflect and be some kind of mirror in this contemporary day and age, and kind of rival the internet in terms of its cultural production tool, then I don't see how we can kind of keep going on this idea of access being the overriding factor. So we've prototyped at the waiting room in Colchester, an old bus station. We've turned it into a library hack makerspace. We asked, when is a library not a library but still a library? And we said, when there are no books from other people in there, when there are the tools for the local community to capture their knowledge and know-how and to contribute it to our local library. So you can go into the waiting room and you can borrow boxes, very basic in our digital age, boxes with kits and instructions and inspiring notes from people who said, this is what I know how to do. Some people have done cross-stitch, some people pinhole cameras, some of the geeks have made Raspberry Pi arcade games, way beyond me. So there's a whole spectrum of these boxes, and I thought, okay, well, in a digital age, will anybody else think much of this little idea that we've had? Is this idea crazy? Probably. So we tested it with 300 business students in Paris, luckily for us, a couple of weeks ago, thanks to the OuiShare team. And every time a group of young people, 20 to 30-year-olds, came and sat down, we said, what do you think of libraries? And they said, like this. When we explained the boxes and I put cross-stitch in front of guys who were in their 20s, they said, we really get this. Can we make one? Can we contribute one to a library somewhere else if we haven't got one of your libraries? And I said, you can just build a library. You can be a library maker. And they were really intrigued by all of this. Except one guy who said, I don't have anything to contribute or share. And in that moment, it kind of said to me all that I needed to know, which was, at 25, probably the same age as he was sitting there, I didn't think I had anything to contribute either. And it may be that this is just my little idea, and it may be not your idea of what a library is. It's up for grabs, it's up for you doing something about it if you've got a different vision. But if we don't do something, if you don't decide what you're passionate about, whether you can contribute to your libraries in some way, shape or form, they are, as the opening speaker, the director here at the Library of Birmingham said this morning, not going to survive the next 100 years. So think about what you're passionate about, what you could contribute. Think about whether you want to do this. Overnight, we had people from California in touch, from an Indigenous Indian community that want to set up a common library. We're crowdfunding for an organisation in Kibera, the largest slum in Africa, because they want to set up a common library and they want to put in their common knowledge and share it with the world. It may not be your idea of what a library is, but if you do want to get involved, we'd be absolutely delighted to welcome you. Thank you.